What if the single most costly belief you've ever carried is the quiet idea that the world is out to get you? Because if you move through your days convinced you're a target, your mind will go hunting for proof, and it will always find some. So what does that belief actually buy you, besides a smaller life? Nothing. Today I want to show you, with real science behind it, that assuming things are working in your favor isn't wishful thinking. It's one of the sharpest mental tools a person can build. Now, before the cynical part of your brain jumps in and says, "Here we go, another guy telling me to just vibe my way to success," close my eyes and manifest a private jet pause for a second, because that's not remotely what this is. I'm not telling you to deny hardship or pretend a genuinely bad situation is secretly fine. I'm not telling you to ignore what's actually happening in front of you or to skip the hard, practical work that real change usually requires. I'm not telling you to picture a beach house and simply expect it to appear in your driveway, or to step off a curb without looking both ways, because the cosmos will apparently catch you. None of that. I'm talking about something underneath all of that surface-level noise, the invisible lens sitting behind your eyes right now, that quietly decides which version of reality you even get access to experience in the first place. There's a line, sometimes credited to Einstein, that asks a single question: do you believe the universe you live in is friendly or hostile? Go ahead, answer it right now, in your head. Not a vague maybe. Genuinely pick one, right now, out loud if you can. Because whether you realize it or not, some version of that answer is already running quietly in the background of your life, shaping everything. Some people move through the world braced for betrayal, convinced people can't be trusted, convinced good luck always runs out eventually, convinced happiness is borrowed time, always half waiting for the next disaster to come collect what it's owed. They assume good outcomes land on other people, luckier people, better connected people, never quite on them. And then there's a smaller group who walk through the exact same physical world, assuming it's tilted in their favor, that setbacks carry hidden doors somewhere inside them, that things generally tend to work out given enough time, that whatever comes their way, they'll find a way to handle it because they always have before. Same planet. Same economy, same weather outside the window. Two completely different internal operating systems, quietly producing two completely different lives, built one filtered moment at a time. Here's where it gets genuinely fascinating from a brain science standpoint. Your brain does not show you reality. You might assume you're a rational observer taking in the world as it truly is, calmly weighing every fact before reaching a conclusion. You are not, and honestly, none of us are. Your brain constructs a workable simplification of reality, a rough sketch built for speed rather than accuracy, and that sketch is not the same thing as truth. Consider this: your senses take in something like 11 billion bits of information every single second: sound, light, temperature, pressure, smell, 1,000 tiny signals from your own body, yet your conscious mind can only handle roughly 40 to 50 bits per second. 11 billion down to 50. Do the math on that gap for a second, because it's staggering. Something has to filter that flood down to a manageable trickle, and that something is your reticular activating system, your brain's built-in gatekeeper, trained over years by whatever you've repeatedly told it matters, whatever you've rehearsed, whatever you've feared out loud enough times. So if your dominant, repeated focus is danger, guess what gets waved through the gate and into your conscious awareness? Rejection, threats, criticism. Every reason a plan might collapse before it's even begun. Meanwhile, an entire parallel stream of information: kindness, opportunity, timing, help gets filtered out before you ever notice it existed. Quick pause, right in the middle here, because I don't want you to lose this one in your feed. If any of this is landing for you so far, take 2 seconds and tap subscribe on Mind Unfolded right now, before you forget. because the algorithm genuinely rewards that, and it helps videos like this one reach the people who need to hear it most. Drop a like too if you're following along. It costs you nothing, and it tells me to keep making more of these. All right, back to the actual science, because it only gets more interesting from here. But flip the filter and train your brain to expect things to work out, and suddenly a different set of signals gets waved through. Openings. Helpful strangers. Timely solutions. Doors you swear weren't there yesterday. Here's the wild part: those doors were always there. What changed wasn't the world. What changed was which parts of the world your filter allowed you to actually see. This connects to something most self-help content never mentions. Modern neuroscience increasingly describes the brain not as a passive receiver of events, but as a prediction engine. It isn't waiting around for life to happen and then reacting. It's constantly forecasting what's about to happen, moment to moment, and then scanning the world for confirmation of that forecast. The way a detective works backward from a conclusion they've already decided is true. I'm not smart enough. This relationship won't last. My business is doomed. Feed your brain a prediction like that, and it will comb through your entire history, your entire day, every conversation you've ever had, to prove it right, and it will succeed. Every single time. Because it's not actually looking for truth, it's looking for agreement. If you expect people to dislike you, a slow reply becomes rejection, a raised eyebrow becomes a verdict, a disagreement becomes evidence in an ongoing trial you didn't know you were running. Your brain isn't reporting reality back to you with any real objectivity. It's confirming whatever you handed it at the start, packaged up neatly so it feels like proof. So, seriously sit with this for a second. What exactly are you handing it day after day without ever noticing you're doing it? Here's a concept you've probably heard of before, but maybe never actually connected to any of this. The placebo effect. Someone believes they're receiving real treatment, even when it's nothing more than an inert sugar pill with zero active ingredients, and their actual physical symptoms improve anyway, not imagined improvement, not politeness toward a researcher, genuinely measurable improvement that shows up on scans and blood work. Clinical research consistently attributes something like 20 to 40% of improvement in medical trials to this effect alone, and it climbs even higher for pain and mood-related conditions specifically. Think about that. No pharmaceutical on the market beats that number through belief alone, and yet belief is doing exactly that, quietly, in trial after trial, decade after decade. Your expectation, all by itself, can measurably shift your immune response, your hormone levels, and the way your nervous system processes pain signals. This isn't fringe science. It's one of the most replicated findings in modern medicine, and somehow it barely gets mentioned outside of academic papers. But it has a darker sibling, one almost nobody talks about: the nocebo effect. Tell someone a sugar pill might cause nausea, and a meaningful share of them will develop real, measurable nausea from an inert capsule that never touched a single one of their symptoms chemically. Their body followed their expectation, obediently, straight into a symptom that was never physiologically possible in the first place. That's not weakness, and it's not all in their head in the dismissive way people usually mean that phrase. That's proof of just how tightly belief and biology are wired together, at a level most of us were never taught to take seriously. So here's the uncomfortable next question. What if entire populations are living inside a slow-motion nocebo? Not from a pill, but from a lifetime of expecting disappointment. Could constantly bracing for rejection or betrayal or failure actually manufacture more of it? Picture two founders hitting the exact same rough patch: lost revenue, a blown deadline, a key partner walking away without warning. Founder 1 thinks, of course this happened to me. Nothing ever works out. It never does. Founder 2 thinks, all right, this is just part of building something real. Same event, down to the last detail. Completely opposite trajectories from that point forward. Founder 1 shuts down emotionally, stops taking risks, starts second-guessing every decision, and more often than not, the business follows them quietly into the ground within a year or two. Founder 2 adapts, extracts a lesson, adjusts course, and keeps moving forward with the same energy as before. After years spent coaching entrepreneurs through exactly this kind of moment, I genuinely argue the biggest reason most new businesses collapse within their first 5 years isn't the market, isn't interest rates, isn't even bad luck in the traditional sense. It's the operator's own mind, quietly and relentlessly confirming its own worst forecast, one small decision at a time, until the forecast becomes true simply because it was believed. And it isn't only business, not even close. The same exact pattern shows up over and over again in relationships, in physical health, in how people negotiate salaries or don't, in whether someone actually applies for the job they secretly want or quietly talks themselves out of it before they even try, alone at midnight, scrolling instead of typing. There's a related concept from psychology called learned helplessness, and it's honestly a little unsettling once you really sit with it. In classic experiments, animals repeatedly subjected to unavoidable stress eventually give up trying to get away, even once an exit becomes freely available to them. The door is standing wide open. They don't move toward it, not because they physically can't, but because their brain has already concluded, based on repeated past evidence, that escape simply isn't possible anymore, so it stops even attempting it. It's a hard thing to watch in a lab, and I don't love the ethics of how that research was originally done, but the underlying pattern is undeniably real, and it doesn't stay confined to animals in cages. How many people have quietly stopped trying because a plan fell apart once or twice years ago, and some part of them decided that was simply how life goes for them specifically? How many genuine opportunities are sitting in plain sight right now, completely invisible to someone whose brain has been trained, session after session, to expect failure before it even bothers looking closely? But if helplessness can be learned through repeated exposure, basic logic says the reverse has to be just as learnable, through the exact same mechanism working in the opposite direction. What if expecting good outcomes can be trained the same slow, repetitive way? What if resilience isn't some fixed personality trait certain lucky people were simply born with, but a filter you can deliberately install through practice, the same way you'd build any other habit? Sit with what that could actually rewire, over time, session after session, quiet decision after quiet decision, in the way you move through your own life, day to day, year to year. You gradually stop marinating in the nocebo and start living inside the placebo, instead expecting good, watching good multiply in front of you, not because reality magically bent itself around your wishes, but because your filter finally started letting the good back through the gate it had been quietly blocking for years. To be clear, and I want to really underline this, believing things work out for you doesn't mean life magically gets easier. And it definitely doesn't mean pain disappears from the equation entirely. That's the part almost everyone misunderstands about this whole idea. It doesn't mean people won't leave your life. It doesn't mean you'll never fail, never get laid off, never get your heart broken in some genuinely painful way. It means every single one of those experiences becomes raw material you can eventually put to use, that failure converts into usable information, that loss converts into real education, instead of just sitting there permanently as loss with nothing attached to it. That single reframe changes the actual questions your mind goes looking to answer on your behalf. Your brain functions a lot like an unusually obedient search engine. Ask it, why do I always fail at everything? And it will dutifully return a long, detailed list of supporting receipts pulled from your entire history. Ask it instead, how has everything I've ever been through actually worked out in my favor, eventually? And it will just as dutifully, just as thoroughly, go find that answer too, because that's simply what it's built to do. Think about an avalanche sweeping down a mountainside in the dead of winter. From a distance, in the moment, it looks purely destructive, full-grown trees flattened in seconds, the whole slope stripped down to bare rock and snow. But by the time spring actually arrives, that same slope is often thick with new growth that wasn't possible before. Because the old canopy that had been hogging every bit of sunlight for decades is finally gone, and seeds that had been buried and dormant for years suddenly get the light and space they'd been waiting for. None of that makes the avalanche itself gentle, or safe, or something you'd wish on anyone standing on that slope when it happened. That doesn't mean you should pretend it didn't hurt, or rush past the damage to get to the silver lining. Feel it fully. Grieve it slowly, properly, get angry if you genuinely need to. That reaction is simply the slide moving through you, and it deserves room to move. But somewhere in the aftermath, once some of that initial force has passed, it's worth quietly asking yourself, if this really is clearing space for something new, what specifically might it be clearing space for in my life? I'll be honest with you, this took me most of my adult life to actually believe, not just repeat. After watching enough genuinely painful chapters of my own life turn, a decade or more later, into the exact lessons or turning points I needed, something in me settled into this belief at a cellular level that life keeps working out for me, even when it doesn't feel like it in the moment. And that belief terrifies me a little, honestly, because I know more hard chapters are still coming. A few winters ago, our old cat, Juniper, passed away peacefully at 16, after being with our family for basically my entire adult life. Barely a week later, still raw from that loss, we were back at that exact same clinic with our younger cat, Otis, who needed a fairly routine procedure done under anesthesia. The vet, gently and honestly, reminded us there's always some baseline risk whenever anesthesia is involved, and that with Otis being on the smaller side, that risk sits a little higher than average. I said I understood, nodded, went home, and then heard absolutely nothing back from the clinic for several hours. I remember that specific, sinking feeling settling into my chest. Please, not again, not this same week. I genuinely don't think I can handle that right now. And even sitting in that fear, I caught myself saying, almost out loud, if something happens today, I trust there's a reason I'll eventually come to understand, even if I can't see it yet. But I really, genuinely hope I don't have to learn that particular lesson this specific week. Otis came through the procedure completely fine. He's curled up asleep near me right now as I record this, utterly unaware that any of this ever happened, or that he was ever the center of that particular fear. But if it had gone differently that day, I know for certain I would have grieved it hard, fully, without rushing past it, and still, eventually, looked for whatever it was there to teach me. Because deep down, underneath the fear in that moment, I actually do believe everything that unfolds in my life is unfolding on my behalf, rather than against me, even on the days it doesn't feel that way at all. So the real question worth sitting with, once all the science and stories fall away, is actually simpler than it sounds. Do you trust yourself enough to grow no matter what comes next? Whatever it turns out to be, you already have, far more times than you probably give yourself credit for on an average day. You've survived every single hard chapter that's come your way so far, 100% of them, without a single exception, even the ones that felt unsurvivable while you were inside them. Once that fact actually lands somewhere deeper than just an idea you agree with, something genuinely shifts in how you move through the world. You stop living permanently braced for the next hit. Stop treating every new challenge as fresh evidence that the world has it out for you specifically, and start seeing your life instead as a long, uneven series of experiences, some genuinely beautiful, some genuinely brutal, and every single one of them, eventually, usable for something. Before we close, here's a thought I find myself coming back to often, especially on the harder weeks. A life is really just a stretch of time and a collection of experiences that happen somewhere between being born and eventually dying, and the one variable inside all of that, which you actually get to control, is the meaning you choose to assign to those experiences afterward. That's genuinely the whole game, when you strip everything else away. Not what actually happens to you in the moment, but what you consciously decide it means afterward, once the dust has genuinely settled and you can finally look at it clearly. So I hope sincerely that you start treating your own life like it's genuinely working out for you, starting today. Because whatever evidence you eventually find is going to depend almost entirely on what you actually went looking for in the first place, and now you know that, so there's no going back to not knowing it. Before we wrap up, let me leave you with one more way to think about this practically, something you can actually use this week instead of just nodding along and forgetting it by tomorrow. Next time something goes sideways, a plan falls through, someone lets you down, a project stalls out, try asking yourself one specific question instead of your usual one. Not why does this always happen to me, but what is this actually setting up? You don't have to know the answer immediately. Sometimes it takes years to see it clearly. But the simple act of asking a different question sends your prediction engine hunting in a completely different direction. And over time, that direction is the entire difference between a life that feels like it's happening to you and a life that feels like it's happening for you. Hey, before you go, if any part of this genuinely shifted something for you today, do me one favor, hit like on the way out, drop a quick comment telling me honestly whether your gut says this world is on your side or against you, and subscribe to Mind Unfolded right now so the next video like this one actually finds you when it goes up. And if you know one specific person who needs to hear exactly this today, go ahead and send it their way. It might land at exactly the right moment for them. Your brain doesn't find truth, it finds whatever you told it to look for. Life isn't happening to you, it's happening for you, one lesson at a time. Thanks for spending this time with me. I'll see you in the very next one.